Now that we know about input commands, we cannot predict what the user will say. What if we want the code to react differently to different answers? That is where conditional statements come into play. Conditional statements are lines of code that only run when a certain condition is met, and they are used a lot in code. Let's take an example. Let's say we make an input statement asking the user to choose between A, B, or C, and we'll store the answer in the variable answer. Now we want the code to react differently based on if the user types A, B, or C. To do this, we need to write a special command called if. This basically tells the code that if something happens, to do this. Next, we want to put our condition in parentheses. Here in the parentheses, we will put what will happen in order to make the code run. Now that we've done that, we are now ready to write what will happen if the answer is A. Notice how there are two equal signs here instead of one, because if we only put one, that would basically be rewriting what is currently an answer with A, which is what we don't want. Now, after that, in order to write what will happen, we need to put a colon. Now we need to write what will happen if the answer is A. Python makes this easy to do, since now all you need to do is press enter to create a new line, and the new line under that will be indented. If it's not, then all you have to do is to just press tab under their line. Now let's write what will happen when the user chooses A. Now that we have that done, let's start on if the user chooses B. You can still use if, but it's better to use another command, which is elif, short for else if. This makes it so we can type what happens when another condition is met. Elif statements can only work if they're under if statements. Now we will do the same exact thing that we did for this if statement above. Now that we have B done, let's do the same for C. Since it is a specific command, we will use another elif. So let's do that. Now that we have all of them, we don't really need to do this step, but what if the user doesn't type A, B, or C? Well, then we will use what is called an else statement. Unlike if and elif, else statements are only used to set what happens if none of the above conditions are filled. But just like elif, it can only be placed under an if statement. Since else is used if no other conditions happen, we don't really need to set a condition for else. So we will write our colon and write what will happen if no other conditions are met. Now that we have everything done, let's run our code. As we can see, if we type A, something happens. If we type B, something happens. If we type C, something happens. And if we don't type any of those, something happens. So yeah, that's all there is for this lesson. Watch next time and we will learn about more things to do with conditional statements. If you found this video helpful, subscribe and like for more tutorials.